So the sheriff's office has been working pretty hard on a lot of different things, and the one good thing that we do have going on is that the coast is doing pretty darn well. We've had problems in Ukiah, we've had problems in the north in Covelo and whatnot, but the coast is holding together real well. We're a little short on manpower, not as short as what we are in other locations. Like I spoke about during our last meeting, I promoted Lieutenant J.D. Comer. Lieutenant Comer is originally from the South Coast, grew up there in Point Arena, and then served his entire law enforcement career, much like me, with the Sheriff's Office in Mendocino County. He's been a resident of the coast pretty much his entire career. We met with John Turner today regarding the purchase of the property down there right on the Gualala River. There are a lot of things that are going in there to clean that up, make sure that it's a good, viable place for people to use. We're looking at the gates, we're looking at the signage, we're looking at any way that we can help you guys to keep that cleaned up and not have it turn into something that would be an eyesore. Or let's face it, any time that there's a nice place for people to hang out, we have had some transient issues, but we're jumping on those. We met with him today, and I think that we've got a good, solid plan in play for when the property closes escrow and things begin to move there. Right now, it's really clean down there. Some folks have done a really good job cleaning it up, and we want to make sure that we can all keep it that way. It's a real gem for the area.
Where is that, Matt? Beyond the campground that's down there, the private campground, or where? It's
right there on the Gualala River. Right before you go over the bridge on the right, that road that goes down there where the riverbank is, and then up towards the art center on the other side.
The kayak beach.
Yeah, the kayak beach, and then just up Old State Road on the first right on Old State Road where that old logging road is.
So you're talking about the Redwood Coast Land Conservancy property. Okay.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
And, you know, it looks like everything's kind of going in the right direction there. Lieutenant Comer and I met with him and our new sergeant, Justin Durazio, who we just promoted to send over to the coast to take JD's location. And so we're getting those contacts down here for Justin. You know, we want to avoid problems before they occur. We don't want homelessness and trash and things like that to get a toehold in there. And so we're going to take a very proactive approach of working with everyone right off the get-go on the things that we know have worked in other areas so that we don't have those problems. Currently, the Sheriff's Office we just hired a lateral from the Ukiah Police Department. That's going to help in our ranks. We graduated 2 from the Police Academy last month. They're doing very well on training. The issue is it takes a lot of time to get a person up to speed. From the time that I hire someone, send them through the Police Academy, before I get an honest day's work out of them, it's about 10 months. You know, before they get off training and they're ready to work on their own. And then we've got an entire year after that where they're on probation. And that is, you know, we're just working to make sure that, they're good performers. They're carrying the flag for us and treating people the way that they should. And let's face it, in law enforcement, it seems like we've had 2 types of people over the years who don't make it. We've got some people who do good police work, but they're not good people. I don't want them working for me. We've got really good people who don't do good police work, and I don't want them working for me either. I want good people who do the right thing and do good police work. And so, you know, those times when we go through shorter manpower, shorter personnel, we're facing that across the entire United States right now, not just here. And we're not going to lower our standards. We'd rather work short than have the wrong person. So I'm going to turn this over to Lieutenant Comer. Just 1 second, and he can give you the nuts and bolts of what he's been dealing with, and then a couple of new programs that we're going to be putting into play basically this month of December.
Good.
Good evening.
Good evening, JD.
So for the month of December, with focus in the Gualala area there, we're going to be doing what's called Pinch the Grinch. And what that entails is we have kind of a bait setup type system specifically for mail theft.
And packages, of course, yeah.
And packages that, could be delivered by UPS or FedEx, etc. And what that does is it tries to capture the players in the area who are committing these crimes. even though we haven't had very many reports, if anyone in the Gualala area, we still want to focus that throughout the county. So we're going to be placing that in effect for the month of December in Gualala, probably as well as further up on the North Coast and possibly to Point Arena, Irish Beach, etc. So that's one thing that's coming up for the month. And so everybody's aware and to pass on the information, if anybody has mail missing from their mailboxes, it's always important to call that into the sheriff's office and report it to us so we know, so we have areas to focus on with this program. That is a big focus point and effort for us to place these in the right location, and we do that through the community's support by calling us when they do have even a single piece of mail or they got mail missing out of their mailbox. Another thing is people can register with the postmaster or the postal service if you're unaware and you know if you have mail coming to your mailbox and what day it's supposed to be delivered. So that's something that any community member can register for and check, and you know if you are missing mail on a specific day or time. So we haven't had very many calls for service in the Gualala area. Moving on, we are dealing with a kind of a long-term issue in the Gualala area. Not to go into too much detail, but we're focusing on a certain individual who's been menacing people in the community, and working together with community members who are affected by this individual, and we're hoping to bring that to a good resolution for all parties involved. Outside of that, that's pretty much the cap, other than what the sheriff spoke about with the conservatory land, of what's going on at the present time.
Now, does anybody have any questions for the sheriff's office?
Yeah, I did. I watched the video replay of last month's meeting, and I was surprised to hear that we have a townhouse right on Highway 1, backs up to the Highway 1. And I thought I heard the lieutenant say that basically it didn't have much in the way of problems about speeding and noise and so forth on the Shoreline Highway here. It was mostly up on Old Stage Road. And that just isn't at all what we're experiencing who live near it. Good example, the speeding, like someone mentioned too, it's very hard for all of us to keep to 25 coming down that hill.
Yeah, I thought that today when I was driving down there.
25 and pretty soon you're at 30. And even 30, 33 or something wouldn't be bad. But I was walking up to the hardware store today myself, my dog and I, and in 10 minutes of walking, there were at least 4 cars that were doing better than 35 going up or down. And I would wave to them and motion to slow down. Guy in a pickup truck, he just beeped and hit his gas pedal going uphill, went faster. But it's been a constant problem with a lot of speeding. The funny thing is, I tend to find they speed worse going uphill than downhill. That doesn't make sense to me, but I guess they get to this end of town and they're out of town as far as they're concerned. And so it's just on weekends, particularly, it's just perpetual. And I'm sure you guys in law enforcement are aware. For some reason, the thing with the big or the lack of mufflers and all on cars is really back in vogue. It seems like when I was 18, that was popular, and it hadn't been around since then. And I know I should have got a ticket back then, but for too much noise. But it's really obvious. At any rate, the traffic is just a hell of a nuisance for peace and quiet of any kind here. And as I say, my neighbors and I have both noticed it has gotten worse over the last couple of years, the last year.
Well, luckily this evening we have the sergeant who runs the highway patrol area on with us, so we can throw those concerns to him. But one of the things that we do see a lot is especially with locals, when they know that they're heading out of town and they know that the speed limit is going to rise, and I catch myself doing it also. I speed up before the end of the speed limit zone. And it's a bad habit. I catch myself doing it when I'm leaving Covelo and Gualala. When I could see the in 25 mile an hour, my foot tends to go down.
Yeah.
But it's just going to take a little public education. And thank goodness the CHP normally has a pretty hot pen, at least most of them that I've known.
Let me ask you, if now that we do have a radar speed sign at the south end, do you guys believe that those help much? And
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And a lot of it with the radar signs, it is actually more of a mental thing. When you see that you're speeding and it dawns on you that everybody else sees that you're speeding, there's something mental about it where you go, oh, and you start to slow down. It's almost like a public shaming thing, like everybody knows I'm speeding. And it's been shown time and time again that they actually do slow traffic.
Well, we appealed about a year and a half ago. We appealed to Caltrans to get one up at this end, and I don't know. I think the guy that was they put it on a list kind of thing, and they talked about how expensive they are and so forth. But since I've noticed, Jenner now has 3 of those signs.
Mm-hmm.
Much smaller community than Gualala, so it just seems like it's time. And I hope you guys in law enforcement, if you have any influence, will encourage that. I think it's perfect for up at this end of town.
If I may intervene, maybe we can bring Sergeant Finnegan into this conversation.
Are you
Aaron,
there?
can you take your mic off? There you
Yep. There we go.
You've
Yeah,
been listening to this?
I've been listening. Yes, I didn't want to jump in as the sheriff was speaking, but yeah, I'm glad to be here and glad to give some input on that. I appreciated the invite down to come and walk the streetscape project, and because of that, I made sure to reach out to Caltrans DOT and have started interfacing with them on some of the things that we discussed, and have had a chance to look through some of the plans a little bit more thoroughly. And I was really glad to see that they actually do have a southbound speed feedback sign in the plan there at the north end of town. Which would be for the downhill traffic. And you did mention as people are going uphill, they do tend to stomp on it a little bit more. I think there's maybe a little false sense of security there where they can lift off the gas and they'll be able to slow their speed faster than if they were going downhill. But, the fact remains the speed zone is the speed zone. So, but the southbound side does have a proposed radar feedback speed sign. And then some of the resources I can bring to the table are, we do have a mobile radar speed feedback sign that I can put at any location, provided there's a wide enough shoulder and ability to do that safely. And so that's something that I'm inquiring to bring over from Ukiah and to put up. And we can do that primarily based on feedback from the community. We spoke a little bit on the video that was posted online about making sure that the community gives us feedback. For instance, I just printed out a traffic complaint today for Pack Woods at Boca Chica and assigned officers to go down and do targeted enforcement on Pacific Woods. And so we really can dedicate resources and respond to feedback and those, what we call traffic complaints specifically. And then just in general, knowing that it's a concern. As you mentioned, you've had that condo there for 20 years, sir, and have noticed an increase over the last year and a half. And so, that's good information for us to have. And I'll be encouraging my guys to spend more time down there, as the sheriff said, with a hot pen. And COVID has put a little bit of a damper on public contacts and trying to decrease exposure to ourselves as well as the public and not spread anything unnecessarily. But we also want to make sure that we protect the pedestrians and the cross traffic and the people in town. And so through enforcement, we can accomplish that.
Sergeant, are you mainly assigned down in this area, Southwest County?
Yeah, so we're I handle the coast. I'm the supervisor for the whole coast. So I've got a Point Arena resident post, with 2 officers allocated to that I supervise. And then out of Fort Bragg, I have 4 officers. And so we cover all the way from the river there at the county line, all the way up to mile 92 at Usall Road on the north end of the county. And so it's a broad area. I'm gonna use Lieutenant Comer's statistic. I think it was either 1,200 or 1,800 square miles, because we go inland about 20 miles, 12 to 20 miles at different points in the county. Up Highway 20, we go 20 full miles is our area of responsibility, and then about 7 or 8 miles in on 128. So we are stretched thin, but like the sheriff said, we're not as thin as we are in other areas, and so we'll just work harder to maintain the same level of service to the public.
What's the best way to communicate with you? By email or what?
So the best way to get the traffic complaints in would be to use our public line directly to our communication center, which is in Ukiah. So it's a local number. It's I'll have to look it up just to confirm it. But
look that up, no problem.
yeah, it's just probably the best way, because then it gets logged and tracked, and we have a system in place to hold ourselves responsible to responding to those, and then they also get onto the map, so to speak, for management, and as far as traffic control measures and research and stuff like that. So we do have traffic surveys on file with the county as far as the speed zones and the limits, and so we are able to enforce those speed limits using radar and LiDAR and other enforcement methods. And so we definitely can respond when there is an issue like this.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask the question?
Go for it, Don.
Okay, I'm curious which organization has primary responsibility for Pacific Woods Road, for example, in Gualala? Is it the sheriff or CHP, or is it shared responsibility there? Or what?
Well, primary responsibility would fall on both agencies, depending on what you're speaking to. So traffic and roadway incidents, it would be the California Highway Patrol. The private property, residences, property crimes, et cetera, would be the sheriff's response. So for instance, I was down there in August. I handled the fatal collision. I was the primary investigator myself, because my officers were busy handling other collisions at the time. We had to life flight, I think, 3 people from up north around mile 40, I think, at the same time as that collision had occurred. And so I was there with the fire personnel, and we were able to investigate that to completion. But and so in that situation, the Highway Patrol, any roadway incident, the Highway Patrol is the incident commander. And then, but we rely, on cooperation with allied agencies to assist. I think Lieutenant Comer came to that scene, and he had a coroner investigator there for the death investigation portion of it. And so we all worked together on it.
Okay, so primary responsibility is with the CHP for like speeding issues or noise issues on Pacific Woods Road. And
correct. Yeah, if the noise was being generated by a vehicle, then yes. If it's your neighbor having a party, then no.
Right, I understand.
Yeah.
And also speaking, you mentioned that fatal accident on Pacific Woods Road last summer. Was that primarily DUI related or speed related, or both?
Well, it would be both. So the primary collision factor would be DUI, and then associated factor would be the speed. So he lost control. He wasn't able to maintain control of the vehicle because of the being under the influence.
Do you know if this driver was actually exceeding the speed limit?
So it's a hard question. I don't know. No, I can't say for a fact what his speed was. It wasn't a circumstance where we would do crash reconstruction or impact analysis or anything like that. But my professional opinion was yes, he was, based on the totality of circumstances and all of the evidence on scene, the debris fields, the distance traveled from the first point of impact to the point of rest of the vehicle, and the nature of the rotation of the vehicle, the way it overturned, etc. A passenger was fully ejected out one of the windows. Those things all occur when there's a large impact, a high speed impact.
Now, are you comfortable with a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit on Pacific Woods Road? I mean, in my opinion, it should be slower. I mean, it's a very curvy road.
So the best way to address that would be through the county to have them do a traffic survey. They can set up speed monitors, you know, the wires across the road that get stapled down that monitor people that as they drive over them. And what they do is they look at the engineering of the roadway through county roads would be there. So it wouldn't be a state Department of Transportation. It would be through the county roads because it's not a state route. And so they would be the primary responsible agency for that. And what they do is they would then end up looking at all traffic on the roadway, and they would look at what we call the 80%, is they look at the speed, the average speed of 80% of the traffic, because you're always going to have the outliers that, you know, are below or above. And then that helps them or essentially dictates what the speed limit should be.
So that would be through Mendocino County Department of Transportation, right?
Yes,
Correct.
it would be Howard DeShields' crew
Howard
through
DeShields.
DOT.
Still there? Okay. Who's next? Don? Tom?
I just wanted to note, I put that phone number on our chat service. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sergeant, but I think it's 707-467-4000
Correct.
for the Ukiah number. And that's a 24/7 number. So anybody getting seeing speeders, give a holler to that number and they'll get somebody out there.
Thanks, Tom. I had another question there, Aaron.
Yes, sir.
Along the lines of what Gary was talking about, the speeding going up the hill. Is it feasible to have photo surveillance, or is that something that's too cost prohibitive?
So it's cost prohibitive. We don't have the equipment and the resources for it. And then we also, due to case law, we're not able to enforce any laws with only video surveillance. And so we have to have an officer observe the violation because it's an infraction. It has to be observed by a peace officer.
I don't recall where I've been because I hardly ever leave Gualala, but somewhere I noticed that they had a sign posted that said camera in use or something like that. I don't know if it was on the Bay Bridge, Golden Gate Bridge or something like that, but I think it would act as a deterrent if somebody saw that posted like on a speed limit sign or something like that on the backside. You may not even have a camera, but it just would act as a hell of a deterrent, I would think.
Yes, I have known people to have property under surveillance signs with what appear to be cameras mounted on their property as a deterrent. But unfortunately, we can't do that as a state agency.
Understand. But and real camera use is kind of a costly thing. Okay, that was my question. Anybody else?
You use radar in the sheriff's department at times?
Sheriff's
Yes.
Office does not use radar, but the highway patrol does.
I see.
And that's posted somewhere along Highway 1 in our area. I've seen it.
Correct. Yes. A lot of Highway 1 is speed is enforceable with radar, which would then also include a more modern technology that uses lasers, which is I consider for this particular use is a better piece of equipment, which would be called a LiDAR.
Aaron, I'm glad you brought attention to the fact that in our streetscape plan, there is the plan to put in a radar or a speed controlling measure coming south into town. Going north across the bridge, that does help a lot. Seeing that flashing at you, what your speed is as you're coming into Gualala. So when we get to the point where we get our streetscape going and we have that deterrent, sort of say, coming into town from the north also, I think it'll be very helpful.
Yeah, I'd like to see them get that hooked up first. It's no need to wait for the paving the new street for that.
True. It's just too bad they forget about the speeding by the time they get through town and are heading north by Cypress Village.
Yeah. No, I become much more aware of that down in Jenner, and consciously try to hold my speed down to 25 going down that hill. And the speed feedback signs really have an effect on that. I'm afraid of getting rear-ended sometimes, but so it goes. It's coming into Gualala too, coming up that hill, coming down from 40 miles an hour down to 25, which is really coming down from 55 to 25 in about a quarter mile, I guess. Yeah. It's a pretty abrupt transition, and people who are used to getting up the highway fast catch up with you really fast and get kind of annoyed as you enter Gualala. And I just hope that they realize that I'm a local, and I realize that sometimes Sergeant Finnegan or one of his friends may be lurking in the bushes, and then I don't want to get tagged by somebody I like. So
I think those signs were really good if you're over 25 and not if you're not a male under 25.
Right. You know, I have heard complaints too at night. And Gary, I'd be interested in your input on this. I know a business person who sometimes has to sleep in his office, and he's right across the street from you, and I won't identify him. But he tells me that at night it's a freaking race course, and you hear the souped-up Civics going up and down the hill really, really fast. Gary, do you hear that too?
Oh yeah. You know, the funny thing is, the real problem used to be, we didn't notice cars particularly, or trucks, except we would notice the big rigs coming down the hill and suddenly throwing on their air brakes. And I at that time, I came to GMAC, I know there's Highway Patrol there, and I asked, I've seen signs that say, you know, lay off the, you know, in some towns they'll do that for truckers, lay off your air brakes because they're terribly noisy. He said, you can't do that in California because a sign like that might be a safety issue. But that's not the major problem anymore. It's these other just ordinary cars speeding. And some Harley Davidsons going out of town. 5 and 10 at a time.
So does anybody have any questions on the new COVID orders?
You know, are you ready to talk about that, Sheriff, or is it too new?
Well, we've got COVID orders that came out, a week, 10 days ago. The governor had a briefing today where he was talking about new COVID orders on the horizon. And
48 hours.
We're very concerned that we could have a surge. And the governor would put us all back into that super lockdown again if our region hits that, I believe it's 85% capacity. Now in Mendocino County, we're doing really, really well. We are nowhere near capacity. However, due to the northern region that we're in, with Lake County being close to us, Humboldt County being close to us, it's a collective capacity for a region, not for a county. I believe that we have 4 or 5 in the hospital and 2 in ICU, which is nowhere near capacity, but their capacities could push us up into that next bump because what they're concerned about is they have very small hospitals and bed space there. And so what they're hoping for is that we don't hit that capacity so that we can take on any of their cases that they have.
Got it. Yeah, I saw a confusing statistic. I was only looking at county statistics, but it looked to me like our capacity right now is 28. And I don't know if we're only at 28% in the county. that we're using on ICU beds?
Well, right now I believe that we have I'm trying to remember the number of ICU beds, but we are under 10% used.
Okay, good.
So I want to say we're at 8% of our ICU beds used with 2 people in ICU. So we're nowhere near that. The concern is region by region, because they want to keep hospitals open in regions. So if we had to take a transfer from Lake County or Humboldt County, we would have room to be able to take that.
Yeah, and our region is all the way from Crescent City down to Gualala and inland to the mountains. So
yeah.
So the fear is that they would, the neighboring counties could use up our hospital bed capacity, or
Yes.
okay.
Or we could use theirs. You know, the fear is that one county could cause a surge into another county for the need for hospital beds.
Mm-hmm. And the 101 corridor, there's a lot more going on over there than there is out here on the coast, but still, all the hospitals are over on the Highway 101 corridor, right?
Yes.
Frank
But
Howard and yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to have to leave now. I really appreciate the chance to
Hey.
be heard.
Yeah.
Well, it was
Many
good
times,
speaking
Gary.
to you.
Okay, take care.
Thanks for coming on, Gary. Yeah.
I'll see you again.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay. Any
So the other thing that the governor says is that there may possibly be the extreme case, which is the shutdown again, right?
Yes. And if we hit that 85% capacity in a region, it will be the shutdown again.
Oh boy.
and that lasts 3 weeks minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it won't be lifted until we get our ICU capacity back below the standard.
Yeah. And then the other things that I've been reading basically said that we are never going to get rid of COVID. I don't know if I believe that yet or not, but what they're saying is it will be a seasonal thing, just like the flu, and everybody will need to get vaccinated. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, some of the studies that I've read are a little bit conflicting, but all of them pretty much run in line with this is something that will be ongoing. So,
yeah, that's what I've read as well. I think will be like getting a flu vaccine every year, and they'll be modifying it because the disease modifies itself.
yes.
And that's how you build up herd resistance. So yeah, the flu is still a danger to us, especially the older folks. And COVID will be around as a even more present and severe danger forever, I think. And even with a vaccine that's 95% effective, which is superb, there's still a chance in 20 you could get COVID. So people do need to be careful.
The immunity may only last for 6 months. We don't know at this point.
Correct.
There are some people who are getting it for a second time.
Mm-hmm.
On T cells and D cells and your body's immunity and what you've had before, et cetera, but they're finding that it might only last for 6 months. Just read that in Science News today. So.
It's the emerging truth. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. You know, I as a journalist, I covered the very early days of the AIDS epidemic before it was called AIDS. The first story I wrote about it was about a thing called the gay bowel plague. And people were dying from it, and we didn't know why. And within 2 months, we heard that there might be some virus, and nobody knew how it was transmitted for 2 years. And we forget these things, but I kind of lived that day to day for 2 years of figuring out that this was AIDS. And even then, it took us 3 or 4 years before we figured out HIV and the relationship between the two. And COVID, a coronavirus, the common cold is a coronavirus. There are a lot of coronaviruses. Some of them will kill you, some of them won't. Some of them mutate, some of them don't. Some of them are airborne, some of them aren't. We're going to have to figure this one out, and just in the meantime, be extremely careful with everything. So thank you for your good work, Sheriff. You know, I worry about you guys. I worry about our supermarket workers. I would love to see Congress give an extra $10 an hour to anybody who's being forced to work anywhere right now.
And the health workers, the folks who are on those front lines every day,
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the things that we do to take care of ourselves are because of the issues that they have had, and they are right on that cutting edge of what is the bright line best practices, and then they're passing them on to us as fast as they possibly can. And so a lot of our doctors, a lot of our healthcare workers, nurses, they have figured things out to the point where they're really preventing a lot of problems for other first responders, with EMTs, with police officers, firemen. It's things that are being learned in these emergency rooms.
Well, well, we'll all be careful about that. Shall we move on to another topic, or is there anything else for the law enforcement folks?
Anybody? Mary, Don of law enforcement? Otherwise, we can talk about something else. We're not in official session.
Really nice to have the CHP as well as the sheriff attend. It's really great. I want to thank law enforcement ever so much for coming and reporting here for not only the committee, but also for the public. And the public does view this after the meeting, and you're the most popular thing they watch. So I want to thank you so much for being here. And
Thank
giving
you.
us
Well,
time.
It's true.
I
I look at the official statistics, and law enforcement report and streetscaper are two high drawing agenda items every time.
Well, you don't know how good it feels to be able to work in an area when you see the national narrative of what's going on, and then we come to these meetings, and we all wish we could do them in person, but you have no idea how good it feels to know that we're supported by our community, and I hope that our community feels supported by us. It's law enforcement is a handshake between the community and the people who are enforcing. It's not us and them; it's us and us, and you know, we're just really blessed in Mendocino County to be able to have this attitude and to be able to serve our neighbors. That's what it comes down to for me.
Well, thanks to you and JD for coming down here today. And Sheriff, I just want to give JD a pat on the back in front of you for helping us a couple of weeks ago when Aaron and he came down and walked the entire length of the Streetscape project and gave us their thoughts and shared them on video with our community. And we've had 100 views on that video in our community since they came down. So that was a really great use of their time, and we really appreciated what they had to say there. And I got a lot of compliments for posting that.
Thank you, and my pleasure.
All right, I think we're going to jump off. We've got just a couple of things that we need to deal with this evening at the substation in Point Arena. But thanks so much for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
We'll see you in the new year. Have a good one, you guys.
Alrighty.
Have
Thank
a good
you.
holiday.
Cheers.
Take care.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'll echo what they said. I appreciate the support from the public, and we're happy to be here and helping in whatever way we can.
Well, thanks, Aaron. Appreciate that.
Definitely. Any other questions or topics for me? Or
At the moment, probably not, but next month for
Okay.
sure.
all right, sounds good. I'm gonna jump off and finish up my day as well. You guys have a good evening.